Oh, hi. I'm Nailah Jefferson, the director of Vanishing Pearls. This is my very first Ustream, so I hope all goes well. And thank you for tuning in. The film opens in 2 days. I can't believe it. April 18th, New York and LA. Tell your friends, your family, and as I said in my PSA, your mom and him, as we say in New Orleans. Hope you all come out and support, and I hope that you join me in this Ustream so I can answer any questions that you may have regarding Vanishing Pearls. Oh, I think I have some questions coming in. I'll start the conversation. It's been about a 3-year process getting this film made, and it really has been like a labor of love. Um, when we started, I didn't quite know how long it would take, and perhaps if I knew it would be 3 years, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have gone into it. I don't know. I probably would have been a little bit too intimidated at being my first project and all. But it's been a definite learning experience, not only getting to know the people in this community, but also learning just so much about a lifestyle that I never knew about it, never knew anyone who engaged in it. So it's been quite an experience, and I have a much deeper appreciation, I think, for my state and the people who dwell along the Gulf Coast and what they pour into places like New Orleans, where I'm from, and really give Louisiana its identity. I mean, no one would be coming down here if it weren't for the music and the food. Let's just be honest. So just very, very gratifying to be able to, in a way, give back to these people who've poured so much into me and the great state of Louisiana. I'll just talk about my journey thus far. It's been, I mean, I can't complain. I can't complain not one bit. Um, like I say, it's always to everyone. It's been about a 3.5 year journey thus far, getting the film made, going into 4 years as the 4 year anniversary of the BP oil spill approaches. And we started off probably thinking that the film would take maybe a year and a half. We'd shoot, go into post production, and that'd be a wrap. But I mean, of course, I think those are kind of the fairy tales that live in your head when you haven't completed one film yet. You kind of walk in with a naivete that I think you need to have in order to even get the project going. So I did, and within about a year and a half of the film, we realized that indeed the problem was bigger than we thought it was, and that both economic and ecological recovery were not occurring within the 2 year window that people like Kenneth Feinberg and Dr. West Tunnel, the predictions that they had put out there. So we continued to shoot, and I really, within a year, I mean, Mr. Byron always warmed up to me because we had that kind of, I was friends with his son-in-law, but the other fishermen really started to warm up to me more and more, and I learned more about their history, about their struggle, just how hard it was to maintain this way of life, and even more so since the spill because they weren't fairly compensated, and then on top of that, their crop is dead, so they can't go to work. And that's, I mean, I was always invested in the project, but that's when I would say they really like hooked me in and like grabbed my heart. And so I knew if I was a person who didn't know anything about this way of life, didn't particularly know these people that well, that if I could get hooked, then I believe that an audience could too. So we wanted to stay with the story, and I promised them I would. We try and stay as long as we could so that we had some type of finality. I feel like with a lot of the oil spill documentaries that came out within, 6 months, a year and a half of the spill, there were still a lot of questions like, well, did they get paid enough? We don't know. Will it have this type of ecological effect? We don't know. But I feel like in Vanishing Pearls, we answer a lot of those questions that were posed when the spill occurred and even a year later. So we know that, in fact, the 2 year window of predictions that Mr. Feinberg and the scientist West Tunnel, who was behind the claims framework, we know that those are, in fact, inadequate because we're 4 years out now. And like we say in the film, fishing in Lake Pontchartrain Basin, where the oystermen of Pointe Hache fish, it's down 71% since before the spill. And unfortunately, no one's doing anything to true up those claims that were paid out under that the 2-year prediction methodology. So that's where we are now, but the fishermen are continuing to push, and hopefully this film can put a fire under someone in public office and move them to try and support these fishermen as best they can. The question that's come in is, did I go to film school? And I actually did go to film school. I went to Boston University. From 1999, I'm aging myself, to, I guess, I finished early. I finished a semester early. So I actually went from 99 to 2004. I was chomping at the bit to get out and just work. And throughout film school, I interned a lot. And that's when I was really introduced to the world of documentaries. I was hired by a company, Blackside. They did Eyes on the Prize, that documentary, which was phenomenal, about the civil rights movement. And not long after I was brought on there, the project that they were working on actually was taken over by California Newsreel. And so I worked on the project with them and many people from WGBH, which is the PBS affiliate in Boston. And we worked on a documentary called Race, the Power of an Illusion. And so that's when I really learned how to research, and again, it just reaffirmed my love for documentary filmmaking. So yeah, I went to film school, and that's where I honed my my skills that have brought me to this place. Let's see, any more questions? How do I feel about sharing my film with the world? I think I feel better now than I did during the Slamdance Film Festival. That was terrifying. That was the first time anyone other than kind of my small circle had really seen it. And so, you know, I had to really calm my nerves. My sisters, oh goodness, this is a story here. My sisters, I have 4 sisters. They all came to Utah, my sisters and my mom. And I was kind of insistent on having my own room just because I knew I would be full of nerves and I just wanted to kind of relax, be by myself. But they were insistent that they spent the money to come out and they were not getting a separate room. They were going to cram into the room with me. So I had to basically check myself. I didn't have any time for any freakouts, anything like that. I had to just get my mind right, as we say down here in New Orleans. Get my mind right and go out there and share with everybody what I've been working on for 3 years. And so, like I said, it was a bit terrifying, but I thank God that we had a positive response. And here we are. And obviously, it's a positive response. I mean, a firm chose us to be their first documentary to be released. So that was kind of like the cherry on top of the cake, you know, to have a great partner in this entire journey. The biggest challenge that I had, in doing this film is, I think, trying to strike an appropriate balance. At the heart of it, of course, are the fishermen, and so their story, I felt, should be at the forefront. But then, of course, there's this bit of history that they have with the oil and gas industry. And there are legal questions, and then, of course, the whole science of the estuaries that plays into everything. So I knew I had to strike an appropriate balance there. It needed to be probably 90% or 85% the fishermen, and perhaps 15% everything else, just so for those people who weren't maybe as compassionate to their story, or perhaps were compassionate but still felt like, well, they can pick up and do something else, you can see why they can't, because the claim system failed them, and obviously there's scientific proof backing that the estuaries were indeed damaged, and that as shown in spills like the Ixtoc and the Exxon Valdez, that perhaps it won't be a 2-year window, but it could be a 10 20, 30-year window. So I would say that was the hardest part of the film, but I hope that we've been able to balance it appropriately to draw audiences in, give them a good understanding, kind of a crash course in oyster fishing, so they'll walk away not only having felt the plight of the fishermen, but also having grasped an understanding of this industry and of what happened in the aftermath of the BP oil spill as far as claims and the ecological effects. All right, more questions. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, we often see the end, but we don't see the beginning. Speak to your journey as a filmmaker. Okay, I think I rambled on about this a bit in the beginning. But actually, I thought for a long time I would just work in production, or I really enjoy writing. So I thought I would do that. And so once I finished film school, I interned a couple of different places. I probably interned at like every black film company, Edmonds Entertainment, 40 Acres and a Mule in LA. I worked, like I said, California Newsreel, and I also worked as the executive assistant to Lee Daniels, which was a big eye-opening experience. That was my first time I really got to see the inner workings of an independent production house, and it let me know that there was no right way to do this. I don't think that's taught enough in film school. You're not taught to be as let's say, innovative as I think we have to be in order to get things going as independent producers. So it started there, and that's when I really saw that it's a hard business, but again, you just have to be innovative, and if you are, you're willing to think outside the box, you can make things happen. Not long after that, they downsized at Lee Daniels, and so I came back home to Baton Rouge, came back home, and I lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That's only about an hour away from New Orleans, and I worked for a very small production house, and it gave me the first chance I had to produce myself and really step into the shoes of a producer, and take the helm of a film. And so it was a documentary about historically black colleges and universities. Unfortunately, that company ran out of money, and so the project never saw the light of day. However, it did give me the confidence that I needed to start my own production company, and it led to Vanishing Pearls. I left that company, I want to say March 2010. The spill happened a month later. So I really do feel like, God ordered my steps to bring me where I was and free up my time, and put me in a place where I could really dedicate myself to this story and to this fisherman, and that's how I got to where I am now. All right, let me pick up another question. How dedicated was the entire crew throughout the process? Well, that is a great question. I think one of the things I did learn at Lee Daniels was try and keep your crew and your team as small as possible. Keep the overhead as small as possible. So I did. And in doing that, I had more of a kind of a freelance crew. People were in and out. I really I'm the only permanent person on this project. I started out with a cinematographer. His name is D.A. Bullock. He's very talented, out of Chicago. He's a director himself, and he stayed with me for about a year and a half, and then he got married and moved away. But he really was able to kind of craft the look of the film. From there, I worked with a couple of other videographers, and in the last year I actually picked up the camera myself, which kind of showed my evolution in this process as well. But picked up the camera myself because we wanted to dedicate a lot of the resources we had left to post-production. So that's what we did. And I was able to meet, I want to say I worked with with two different post-production teams. One person really helped me kind of hone in the story, and these other guys gave it a look that I think is beautiful. They took it far beyond I thought their ability. I'm sorry, not their ability, but the ability of the film to look, let me say that. But they did an awesome job, and unfortunately I couldn't have anybody be truly dedicated as kind of full-time. But I worked with what I had, and I think that we were able to accomplish something really great, and put out a beautiful project with the film. Okay, next question. Let's see. What filmmakers have inspired me? I always tell people, um, within documentary films, one of the filmmakers that has inspired me most is Kim Burns. I mean, he's probably the most well-known documentary filmmaker here, in the country. But it was his film Jazz and Eyes on the Prize are probably the first documentaries that I really fell in love with, and I sat down and I watched for hours and hours and hours. Those were, incredibly long series. Other filmmakers that inspired me, I love Stan Nelson. Um, I love people like Quentin Tarantino, Steve McQueen, and of course, Affirm's very own Ava DuVernay. I just have to say, I mean, when they welcomed me into Affirm, it was Mardi Gras day down here, and it had to be like the worst Mardi Gras ever. It was rained out, and I'm sure even if you haven't been down here to Mardi Gras New Orleans, it's a party. And so to have our party rained out, our party, we've been waiting 365 days for, that was disappointing. But when I got the phone call saying, welcome to the Affirm family, I mean, it was an extraordinary feeling. You're working on this project, you don't quite know how people are going to receive it. And for kind of the premier Black female filmmaker out there to call you up and say she appreciates your project, and she supports what you do. Not only that, that she wants to distribute your film, a film that you think perhaps may never see the light of day. I mean, that's outstanding. So I always have to say thank you to Ava and to Affirm, for welcoming me in. And upon welcoming me in, they really introduced me to this model that they have that I think is outstanding. It's brilliant, really, because what they've done is they've taken the power. As filmmakers, I think as artists, period, your hardest fight is to get distribution. Once you get the product done, it's all fine and well, but it kind of doesn't matter if no one sees it. So for them to have this model of Mavs and rebels out there who are supporting the film, spreading the word, from city to city to city, I mean, it's really just brilliant. It's a brilliant model, and I don't think I could have a better team behind me. So I say thank you to them, and I can't wait to come out to New York and LA and see you all in person, and tell you thank you and just let you know how much I appreciate you, appreciate your support of the film, of the fishermen, of myself, and so I hope that we do you proud, and you're pleased with the product. Okay, next question. Oh goodness, I might be moving a little slowly. Let's see. What other documentaries are you associated with, or is VP the first documentary? Vanishing Pearls is my very first documentary. Like I said before, I've been working on a documentary about historically Black colleges that I think was a beautiful film. Unfortunately, the production house just ran out of money. And then before then, I interned on a project with California Newsreel called Race, the Power of an Illusion, which I think was a very smart film that gave you a whole different way of thinking about race, and realizing that race in some ways doesn't exist. It's this man-made idea that was set up to really divide people. So when you look beyond that, if you really look into the science, race doesn't quite exist. So all these things that we think divide us and make us so different, in fact, have no real scientific basis. So I worked on that project as well. So those are the first two documentaries under my belt, but my sorry, the only documentary that has come out of Perspective Pictures, which is my production company, is Vanishing Pearls, and it is the only film I've ever directed in my entire life. So it's been a process, like I said, a learning experience, and I really can't wait to take on my next project and apply all those things that I've learned to it. All right, next question. Let's see. Let's see. How did you find funding, and what are the best resources? Oh goodness, I'm probably not the best. That's from Tatiana. I'm probably not the best person to ask that question because, like I said, I kind of was raised in the Lee Daniels school of anything to get it done. So we did a Kickstarter campaign. We didn't raise all the money. It probably set my goal too high. But in doing so, we were able to get the word out. And so we got donations, private donations. We also reached out to some nonprofits. We got a small donation from Catholic Charities, donation from Oxfam America. They're very involved with the fishermen after the spill. And I funded a lot of it myself. I am in debt. So, but hey, that's how the game goes, right? I took out, I want to say maybe 2 loans, and then in my final year of shooting the film, 2012 to 2013, I was fortunate to meet Dean Blanchard, who is the executive producer of this film. He is the largest shrimp processor in the state of Louisiana and actually the U.S. So if you've eaten a shrimp in your life, odds are, and it's a domestic shrimp, odds are it's probably come from his processing plant. But Dean Blanchard came on, and he, like so many people, has still not been paid by PP. So he very much so felt the plight of the fishermen, and I think he was a bit. He felt more compassionate towards them because he's someone who has a bit of who's a bit more financially stable, and so if he's not compensated fairly, he can survive a bit longer. But he realized that's not the situation of a lot of fishermen, particularly those in Pointe, Hache. So he decided to contribute to this film, help us get to the finish line so that the story would be told and that it could have obviously a positive effect on this community and other Gulf Coast communities. Okay, let's see what else we got here. What has been response from local news press taken interest in the film? It's interesting. When we were in Slamdance, I didn't hear anything from local press, and then a local African American publication, the New Orleans Tribune, actually reached out. They covered the fishermen after the spill, just after the spill in 2010, so they were interested. And they followed up with me, and they did a story, and they actually put me on the cover. I'm trying to see. I think I have one over there. It might be too far to reach, but it was interesting because there was this big cover, and and then me kind of in this corner. And so when I saw it, I was shocked. I couldn't believe that they put me on the cover. And then of course you're thinking, oh Lord, that picture is terrible, but they were willing to really highlight the issue, which was exciting. And then it kind of went quiet. And then once we were picked up by a firm, the local newspaper here did a story. They've done 2 stories from what I know, but they haven't reviewed the film. So we'll see what their response is once they do. I hope that it will be, all things good. But the media down here, they walk a fine line because in so many ways they have to continue to project that identity of Louisiana being, this gem that has all the seafood and things are great. But in reality, that's not indeed how things have played out since the spill. We are still leading the U.S. domestically. We're still leading in the U.S. As far as seafood providers. We're actually 49th. But number 1 in the lower 50. Alaska is still the number 1 seafood provider. But as far as shellfish goes, we're number one. But our numbers have dwindled. We were so far ahead of everyone that, we couldn't be completely knocked out by the spill, but the numbers have dwindled and they're continuing to dwindle. So I don't know how much longer we'll be able to hold that spot. Okay, next question. Do you have aspirations to move into narrative script format, or will you stay in documentaries? I absolutely do have aspirations. I have ideas now. I think all of you filmmakers, writers out there know, I think the challenge is sitting down and writing. So I'm finding the time to do that now. I still do love documentaries. I never want to box myself into one category. That was interesting during Slamdance. I was often referred to as a documentary filmmaker or documentarian, and I was thinking, oh, it's not really how I see myself. But I mean, you can be called worse things. So I was just happy to be there and happy that they were showing my film. But absolutely not. I don't plan to just stay in the documentary film world. I do plan to venture out into narrative and many more art forms within this world. So let's see. What is the effect of the next generation of fishermen in that area? That's a great question. At the end of the film, Kevin Bailey, who is a shrimper and an oyster fisherman, he talks about how his son decided to enlist in the Marines instead of taking up the family business. And that story is a great example of what's going on in the fishing industry in places like Pointe and Hache. A lot of the guys who are still out there on the waters are older. They're in their 50s, they're in their 60s, and it's about that time where you expect their children to come in and take over. But as they explain it, I mean, it's become so off-putting to the next generation because it's become so difficult of an industry to get into and to be able to sustain yourself in, that it seems like, unfortunately, it's kind of a dying industry, which for me is very sad. And of course, I'm sure for the people who live down there and who've participated in this way of life, it's even sadder for them. But that's why we really wanted to make sure that when we told this story, it wasn't just about the spill. It was very much about the people and their history, so that if in fact this way of life is one that within the next couple of years is no more, then we have kind of this last living testament of the fishermen of Pointe and Hache. All right, let's see what else. What was the budget for Vanishing Pearls? Well, it it was about $180,000, just about. And we're still spending. No, it was about that much. It was less before Slamdance. I didn't realize just how expensive film festivals were. But again, very blessed to have an investor who believed in the project. And when we got into Slamdance, and I said, "Oh my goodness, we're gonna have to drop another like $20,000 on this thing." He was able to do so. He was willing to do so. I heard about it. He wasn't excited to spend the money, but we were able to fortunately get it done. So the budget came to about $180,000. What advice do you have to those with no film school experience? I think the best experience you can get, period, is to intern, dedicate volunteer your time. That's one thing I think that you absolutely have to do. A lot of people, don't want to work for free, but again, that's just how it goes. When you're able to intern, you immerse yourself in this world that you never knew of, and the more willing you're able to dedicate yourself and your time selflessly, the more producers and directors and writers are willing to share with you of their knowledge and their experience. So I would say for those of you who did not go to film school, you absolutely do not have to go to film school to be successful in this business. I'm glad I did go, but you don't have to. I don't think it's a requirement. But I would say go out there, get on a movie set, learn what you need to learn, so that you can move ahead. You have to absolutely, even if you go to film school, you have to have experience in the field, or else you won't survive in this game. Okay. Let's see. What was your budget? Do you think you had an advantage as a native in being welcomed into Pointe and Hache community? Absolutely. I absolutely had an advantage being a native. I didn't know Mr. Byron before the spell, but I did know his son-in-law, so he was able to vouch for me in a way. And then we found that Mr. Byron actually knew some of my family, and so then he welcomed me in even more. And then once you're in with Byron Incolade and Pointe and Hache, that opens up the door to the entire community. So absolutely, I had an advantage. And you know what? When I was working in New York at Lee Daniels, I had a friend whose mother would often say, "Why don't you, because it was hard getting into film and television in New York." Her mom would always say, "Why don't you just go back home and break into the business there, and then you can come back." And I was always kind of like, "What? Why would I do that?" I felt if I did that, I was a bit defeated. But it turns out it actually worked to my advantage. So for those of you who are perhaps in larger markets where it seems a bit more difficult, don't frown at the opportunity to perhaps go into a smaller market, work with what you know, and just try and maximize the opportunity, because it absolutely has it's worked for me. Okay. How was your Slamdance experience? That's from Midwest Maven. It was a good experience. I didn't know what to expect. I actually have only been to one film festival in my life. But and I would actually probably suggest that even if you haven't finished a film, you should probably go to a film festival, take it in, maybe even volunteer your time so you can really, really just get a sense of how everything works. But Slamdance was a great experience. Everybody is trying to get into Sundance, I think, but we are actually exposed to some of the same buyers and the same media. So the fact that I was able to experience Slamdance was I think great, and I wasn't overwhelmed by I think the enormity that is like the Sundance Film Festival. But another great thing about Slamdance, and one thing that was very gratifying, is that it's blind submissions. So you know that you're not getting in because you worked with this production company or because this person suggested. You're really getting in by your own merits. And so for somebody like me who very much kind of questioned their ability for a long time, it took me a long time to really believe that I could direct and kind of lead a film. So for someone like me who questioned their ability, it was quite gratifying, and it kind of let me know, like, okay, you're legit. You're a filmmaker. This is, people who don't even know you are saying, yeah, you're worth it. You can come on in. You can join the club. So I had a great Slamdance experience. Very warm, tight community, and I would suggest to everyone to submit. It's a great group of people. So I give Slamdance. I give it a thumbs up. It was a good time. All right, thank you for... Oh, someone's saying thank you and congrats. So that is from Tatiana. I think I answered your question. And Sheena London. So thank y'all. Thank you very much. I hope that you are able to see the film. I hope that you enjoy it. Please spread the word. Like I said earlier, tell everybody, tell your family, your friends, your mama and them to come on and see Vanishing Pearls, New York and LA, April 18th this weekend. And then, of course, more dates and locations on affirm.com. Uh, someone just saying, yeah, Nailah. That's funny. Oh, how did Maxine Waters get involved in the documentary and the story of this community? That's a very good question. Of course, she seems out of place. She's from Los Angeles, not Louisiana. But Maxine Waters is very much a champion of the African American community. And so when she heard about this spill and she heard that the Pointe Hache fishermen were not getting the attention that they deserved by local lawmakers, she made sure to come down. And she's actually the one who invited Byron to speak on Capitol Hill. So that was exciting. She, like me, didn't know that there were African American, that there was this African American fishing community. And so when she heard and she knew that Byron was the person with the history, she said, "You've got to come testify." So she did, and she to her credit, she was the first person in a very long time who allowed these guys a platform to give voice to their grievances and also give a face to very many people who didn't know that this community existed. So that's how she got involved. And I asked her before, I said, well, what do you say to people who say, well, why are you kind of butting your nose into Louisiana politics and Louisiana citizens' business? And she said, well, I was elected by the people. And no matter who I'm supposed to represent, I will always represent those who need me, and particularly those who are being marginalized. So that is how Maxine Waters got involved, and she still keeps in touch with the fishermen. And I hope she can make it out to an LA screening, if not a DC screening, to come out and support the film. And let's see what else. When did you determine that including the history of the fishermen was essential to the story, and why? Oh, I determined that, like I said, about a year and a half into the story. That's when the market kind of was getting flooded with different, whether they were smaller or bigger oil spill documentaries. And that's not what we wanted to produce. We knew that there was something unique about this community, unique about these people, and they were the heart of the story. A lot of times you saw films where it talked more about the ecological damage. It talked about the oiled beaches, oiled marshes, the oiled birds, wildlife. But I mean that all of those things are important, but we very much wanted to keep our focus, the focus of Vanishing Pearls, on the people. And in doing that, we had to tell you the history, how they've gotten to where they are. And that history is very important because it was a fight. It was an absolute fight for these people to come from this institution of sharecropping to being independent fishermen. And so once you realize that fight, you also realize how hard it is for them to give up this way of life, and how devastating it is to experience this oil spill and to be where they are now, which is not fishing, unfortunately. All right. What else is next? Oh, I only have a couple more. When Bob M., the lens Nola, that's Bob Marshall, who's in the film, said people who say oil spill, let's see. Oh, I see. This is someone who's seen the film. He says in the film, you have to accept the risk as far as oil companies. They want you to privatize the profit but socialize the risk. Okay, I hope I haven't confused y'all because that was totally unclear there. But Bob Marshall is a journalist with The Lens, and he says in the film that as far as oil companies go, they want to privatize the profits. These companies are making money hand over fist, but they want to socialize the risk. So when there is a spill, we all have to kind of shoulder that burden, but we don't get any of the payoff, obviously, when they're making money hand over fist. That statement right there really stuck out to me when he said it, and I knew we had to make sure we got it in the film, because he really broke down the kind of inner workings of the oil and gas industry, the mindset of the oil and gas industry. They really have for years and years, and we've allowed them to put themselves in a position where they can run crazy over our lands, and abuse our natural resources. And but they're not held responsible, and I don't quite understand why, because the profits are so extreme. Why wouldn't you hold somebody in check? I don't understand. For years and years, Louisiana wasn't even getting our fair share of offshore revenue from oil and gas drilling. A lot of it would go to the U.S. government, but Louisiana wasn't getting a lot of that money. We finally fought to get more of those funds, and so now we're finally getting those funds, but we still haven't stood up to them to say, okay, now we're going to continue to allow you to drill. We're going to continue to allow you to become extremely, absurdly wealthy from our natural resources, but we're not going to make you be environmentally responsible. And so that's what his point was. He refers to it as a kind of an abusive relationship is how he says it. When people are stuck in abusive relationships and they continue to go back and go back, even though they're obviously in a dangerous situation. But that's kind of how he describes the relationship between Louisiana and the oil and gas industry. For some reason, we just can't walk away. For some reason, we just can't stand up and say, you have to treat me fairly. You have to treat our people appropriately, or else you can't continue to drill here. And the thing is, Louisiana is so rich in oil and gas resources, they're not going to leave. And that seems to be the cry of our politicians. If we impose more regulations, they're going to leave, they're going to leave. They're not going to leave. We know how hungry these companies are to drill and drill and drill. They're not going to leave. So we really need to encourage and urge our public officials here to stand up to the oil and gas company. But yes, it's very much an industry, an atmosphere where the profits are privatized, but the risk is socialized. And that's not only the fault of the oil and gas industry, but it's very much also the fault of our public officials who allow them to abuse our waters, abuse our lands, and ultimately put these people who reside on the Gulf Coast in terrible, terrible living conditions, as they are now since the spill. Let's see. What else? Oh. Okay. Well, I think that's about the end of it. It looks like we are wrapping things up. Thank you all for coming on, tuning in. I hope that this was insightful. I hope that you will come out and support Vanishing Pearls. Please remember to tell everyone April 18th in New York and LA, and to check affirm.com for more listings, more dates. I think we have about 14 or 15 locations now, which is again huge for someone who didn't even know if their film would see the light of day. You're churning away for years and years and years to put out an 80-minute product, and you just hope people will go see it. And so again, thank you for coming on. Please encourage people to come out, especially opening weekend. If we have good numbers, then we can possibly extend the run, which would be huge. So let's go out there and make it happen. Again, thank you, Rebels. Thank you, Mavericks. Thank you to the entire Affirm family and everyone who's helped support the film, spread the word. Please continue to do so. And I hope to see you out there when you finally get to experience Vanishing Pearls. Thank you. Thank you for your support of the Pointe Hache fishermen. Bye-bye.